Hello and welcome. Unfortunately, we got stuck with an odd number of chosen children, and TK drew the short stick, so looks like he'll have to try and carry an episode on his own. Let's see if he can pull it off. The episode opens with TK and Patamon still flying around on their bed. They almost go over a waterfall, but Patamon manages to just barely save him. After putting his clothes on, TK takes in their situation for a few seconds. After this, he begins to cry. And hey, all things considered, who can really blame him? This causes Patamon to reflect on the fact that there's little he can do to help because he's the only partner Digimon who is yet to Digivolve. After realizing how inadequate he is to help TK out of this situation, he starts to cry himself. I gotta say, this scene actually made me feel bad for Patamon, so I think it accomplished its goal. All the other partner Digimon have reached their champion form, and since he hasn't yet, especially in this situation, he feels very inadequate. It's a nice tender moment, and I kinda like the way it was handled. TK takes a couple of humorous guesses at what Patamon might digivolve into, and then they move on. The only other thing I'll say about these scenes is that Patamon is freaking adorable. As a matter of fact, I think I may now have diabetes. They come to a set of train tracks and hear what they believe to be a train about to pass by. They consider jumping on it, but the train never actually gets there. The sound passes through as if it did, but it seems the train is simply invisible. And now we come to Primary Village. This location mainly consists of toys growing from trees, a very bouncy floor, and gigantic toy building blocks. This cheery and happy place immediately brightens both of their moods, so they run around to go check it out. Eventually, they come across a little basket with what appears to be a small blob with eyes laying down inside. They find a couple other similar creatures, and Patamon explains that they're baby Digimon. They also find an egg with a note instructing to rub gently. TK does this, and another baby Digimon pops out of it. Patamon asks TK if he remembers anything from when he was a baby, and TK reflects back on what I presume is his earliest memory. Basically, he's in a backyard playing with a bunch of blocks and then falls over and hurts himself. He starts crying, and Matt comes over to comfort him. And then we cut to Electmon. He's apparently the protector of baby Digimon. He's fishing in a nearby river by shocking the water and then kicking all the now dead fish into a net. Suddenly, all the baby Digimon start crying, and TK and Patamon aren't sure what to do. And for the record, yes, I do realize that we're almost halfway through this episode, and I've had almost nothing to say about it. Unfortunately, I can do little else. That's what this episode is. It's trite and, for the most part, pretty meaningless, but at the same time, it's also cute. There's really not much subjective or even objective I can say about this episode. I can only really describe what's going on. But I don't dislike this episode, even though it's mostly not important, because it's actually pretty entertaining to watch. So, for the most part, that's what this episode is. Trite, but cute. Take it or leave it. So anyway, Elecmon hears the crying, comes up to the village, sees Tiki and Patamon, and charges forward to attack. He just barely misses and then comes forward to accuse them of trespassing. He explains his role as protector of Primary Village and is very high and mighty about it. He tells them to get out, but Patamon doesn't appreciate his attitude, so they start fighting. And then... No. No. No! No! You don't build up to Patamon's evolution like this and get us all excited about it just so he can evolve for the first time in a situation like this. This guy is neither threatening nor is he even evil. This is just a misunderstanding. You put together all that buildup into Patamon evolving for this? Don't you guys have any idea how to... Oh. Oh, okay. He's not digivolving. Good. Good. I thought they were going to ruin that for a second. This episode does everything in its power to make you think Patamon is about to digivolve. They even foreshadow it early on. So, when this part of the episode wheeled around, I really thought they were going to do it. And how much would that have sucked? It would have been really lame if he had to digivolve for the first time just to hold off a simple misunderstanding with someone who is clearly a good guy. And as an added bonus, this scene where they really make you think Patamon is going to digivolve, but then he doesn't, is another effective way of building up tension and excitement for when he finally does. I was already pretty excited to see what Patamon was going to digivolve into. Now I'm even more excited because they're really building it up. So Patamon and Elecmon keep having their pointless little fight, but TK finally puts a stop to it and tries to get them to take out their anger through a tug of war game. It's kinda weird, but it's also kinda cute, and once again, that's what this episode is really all about. Patamon wins, and this manages to successfully defuse the situation as Electmon is now much more agreeable. They all make up and have a nice little conversation. Eventually, they tell him that they need to get back to Infinity Mountain so they can try and reach the peak. So we get a little bit of dialogue with Electmon saying that going up against Devimon is folly, but TK and Patamon explain that it's something that they have to do. Eventually, Electmon agrees and says he's going to go do something to try and get the island to go back to normal. I think it had something to do with going back to the Yokomon village. What that would do, I have no idea. This was a pretty nice scene. I kind of like the angle of a spectator telling them about how powerful Devimon is, and Tiki and Patamon insisting that attacking him is something that they need to do. Nothing special, but I kind of enjoyed it. We get some short little clips of all the other kids coming together. Devimon talks about how evil he is, one of the Botamon evolves into a Koromon, Patamon resolves to digivolve one day but not worry about it too much right now, and the episode ends. You can chuck this episode away and you probably won't miss too much. But that doesn't mean I would recommend throwing it away because it's honestly quite enjoyable. The whole thing is just built around being cute and fun, and I actually sort of appreciated it for once. I couldn't take too much of this, but once every now and then, it's not bad to have an episode like this. I really only have one thing to complain about. Early in the episode, we see Patamon angsting over the fact that he hasn't digivolved yet. There needed to be some more of that. As it stands, this episode really didn't do too much, and like I said, I'm pretty much fine with that. But if this episode was going to do something, which I guess is always better than the alternative, that's what it should have done. Patamon's feelings of inadequacy and uselessness are interesting, and you could have built a great episode around that. There was some of that in this episode, but I thought there could have been more. Regardless, I will classify this episode as pretty good, and I'll leave it at that. That's my review. Thank you.